and welcome to the Scottsdale Development Review Board public meeting. The purpose of the Development Review Board is to maintain the quality of development in Scottsdale by reviewing all of the design aspects of a proposed development and the relationship of its design components to the surrounding environment and community. The board also reviews all preliminary plats for subdivisions to assure conformance to policies and ordinance requirements. The agenda consists of the roll call, public comment on non-agendized items, administrative reports, minutes approval of the prior meeting, and action items. A roll call vote will be taken after each item's motion. The liaison will call each board member's name to indicate their desired vote for that item. After the vote has been counted, the liaison may read out the final vote. Citizens wishing to speak during public comment time or to speak specifically on an agenda item may fill out a blue Request to Speak card to the staff table before the agenda item is to be discussed. Citizens interested in submitting a written comment on any item may submit a yellow written comments card in person to the staff table prior to the beginning of the public testimony. When called, please come to the podium, state your name and address, and then begin speaking. Groups wishing to speak should elect a spokesperson to represent the views of the group. To facilitate the meeting, your comment will be limited to 3 minutes for individual speakers, with 1 additional minute for each additional individual present at the meeting who has contributed their time to a representative speaker, up to a total of 10 minutes. I remind our audience that the board's review relates to design matters and does not include consideration of existing zoning district designations, zoning entitlements, or the allowed uses within the zoning district. The board's motion may be to approve with modified stipulations, to deny the request, or continue the case. Thank you for your interest and time. Now we will begin the meeting with the roll call.
Councilwoman Janik.
Present.
Vice Chair Brand.
Here.
Board Member Joyner.
Present.
Board Member Craig.
Here.
Board Member Faki.
Present.
Board Member Gishgari.
Here.
Commissioner Scarborough.
Here.
All present. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment on non-agendized items?
We do not.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Next, do you have an administrative report?
Thank you, Councilwoman Janik, members of the board. Just real quickly, want to note that we will be meeting 2 weeks from now at our May 18th meeting. We will have, it looks like about 3 cases on that agenda for you to review. So we hope we can all see you then. I don't have anything else for my administrative report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilwoman, I just have a quick question on the administrative report. Is there any update on the Dspm update as far as time frame?
Certainly, Councilwoman and Board Member Faki. I did hear recently from our stormwater group, they are wrapping up some of their effort and they're hopeful they can come back to you probably in June is what they're looking to come back in front of the board to give you an update.
Thank you. Approval of the minutes. Do I hear a motion for approval of the minutes of the April 20th, 2023 DRB Board regular meeting minutes?
Yes, I'll move to approve the regular meeting minutes from 4/20/23.
Thank you. Second?
I second.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Janik.
Yes.
Vice Chair Brand.
Yes.
Board Member Joyner.
Yes.
Board Member Craig.
Yes.
Board Member Faki.
Yes.
Board Member Gishgari.
Yes.
Commissioner Scarborough.
Yes.
Minutes approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving along, let's look at the consent agenda. Item number 3, 47DR 2021 Tropical Smoothie Cafe. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Sure.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Councilwoman Janik.
Yes.
Vice Chair Brand.
Yes.
Board Member Joyner.
Yes.
Board Member Craig.
Yes.
Board Member Faki. Yes. Board Member Gishgari.
Yes.
Commissioner Scarborough.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving along to the regular agenda, we will start with item number 4, 37DR 2021, number 2, Hazel and Azure Camelback. And we will hear the staff presentation.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Councilwoman Janik, Commissioner Scarborough, and board members. I'm Brian Clough with the city's current planning department. I'll be giving you a brief overview of the Hazel and Azure Canal Bank improvements, and then be turning it over to the applicant for additional detail. So the request in front of you this afternoon is for approval of the Canal Bank improvements that are associated with the Hazel and Azure project at Camelback and Scottsdale Road. This was heard by the Development Review Board at the last meeting, April 20th. After discussion, the board ended up continuing the case, requesting additional design detail information for those canal bank improvements, including elevations, sections, perspectives, streetscape elevations of the landscape design, and some of the site wall elements of the stretch of improvements. Just to refresh you on where we're looking at, this is the intersection of Camelback and Scottsdale Road on the northeast side there. And a closer look at the stretch of the canal bank that's pertinent to the request. So you can see it extends all the way from Camelback to the project frontage to the north. These are the landscape plans that were provided the first time, showing the segment of improvements that are proposed to be included with new sidewalk and landscaping and other design elements throughout the scope. Then I'm just going to show a couple of the updated exhibits that the applicant provided. They provided more than what I'm going to show you here, so I'll be turning it over to them to go into more detail of the actual design that are shown in the exhibit. So this is a rendered site plan of the scope, Camelback being to the left, and the project frontage here, as showing how it integrates into the proposed development. And then here, this is showing a closer look at the segment that's in front of the proposed development. So at the top of the page here, you can see a closer look. This is along the project frontage. This is in the area where some of those site walls were shown to be proposed. The board had questions about the design and character and feel of how those walls would fit into the site. So these are additional details, sections, building elevations of that portion, and the applicant will be able to go into more detail on that. And then just to summarize, the board did review and approve the overall Hazel and Azure development back in August of 2022. And this portion of the project with the canal bank improvements is scheduled to go to City Council on May 16th of this year. And that concludes staff's presentation. If there's not any specific questions for me, I'll pass it off to the applicant. Thank you.
We good? Okay. The applicant presentation.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, Jason Morris with the Morris Ball on behalf of the applicant. I will be very brief because I think the direction that you gave and the direction that we've been working on with staff was pretty succinct, which was to come back and show the DRB a better sense of exactly what this will look like in terms of the exhibits and the renderings of what's being proposed. So you have a better understanding of what you're approving, of what you are looking at. The only other thing that I will do before I turn it over to Chris Floor, who will walk you through those exhibits, is to give you an update and to thank you for making this a succinct hearing, because we were able in the interim to work with staff. Our permits are virtually ready to be picked up for the buildings themselves. So we're at a point now that this is the item that is standing between us and starting construction on this. So we're very excited. And with that, I'll turn it over to Chris Floor. Thank you. All yours.
No pressure.
Hi, Chris Brown with Floor Associates, 1425 North 1st Street in Phoenix. I'm the landscape architect on the project, and I'm going to go through a series of plan sections, elevations, and then some 3D renderings with views along the pathway, which I hope will give you a much better sense of what we've been able to accomplish in this stretch of canal. Just as a quick overview, of course, it's located, the canal runs along our property and also overlaps with the adjacent property to the south, which our developer, ZOM, does not have direct control over, but who we've been working with, along with the City of Scottsdale, SRP, and the Flood Control District, to figure out what the best approach to improving this area of the canal from an aesthetic and also a functional and maintenance aspect. And am I going the wrong way? Yes, tee me up, George. Oh, okay. Well, let's take a moment then. Thank you. While they're doing that, I'll just maybe reiterate a little bit of the process that we've been through to get here. As I think we outlined in our last presentation 2 weeks ago, the biggest challenge with this stretch of canal has been trying to find a comfort zone or a compromise between the flood control district, their existing stormwater infrastructure that exists within this stretch of right-of-way, the City of Scottsdale and the citizens and ZOM's desire to do as much as we possibly can through this stretch to make it a very pleasant pathway and to make it a critical link in this regional pathway system that we have. And then with the SRP, who does all the maintenance and controls the canal, because they have a lot of maintenance concerns and a lot of overlay easements about what's allowed to be done within this stretch of canal. So hopefully what we've done accomplishes all that. So just going back to where I was, as we described last time, we think about this area of the canal as 3 separate, almost distinct sections, although they're going to be very contiguous and you won't notice any difference. But the way that we had to design and treat each one of these sections is very different. The area next to Azure, which is controlled by ZOM, we were able to bring the finished floor elevation of the buildings and all the right-of-way up to the existing canal bank elevation, which allowed us to develop this area as a bit of a public parklet, if you will. The second area, however, has existing flood control swale, existing buried, very large box culverts. The flood control will not allow anything to be built on top of, or near in terms of retaining conditions. So we had to be very respectful of that. But then when we get down to section 3, where the adjacent development already exists, again, the grade here is brought up to the canal bank. So that allows us to do much more in terms of improvements. Just the overall rendering that Brian already shared. And then going back to this first section next to the Azure building, this is where what I like to describe as a bit of a public parklet. We have about 40 feet of right-of-way along the canal bank here. The first 20 feet next to the edge of the canal, by SRP requirements, needs to be left fairly free and clear because of their maintenance requirements. We can't even do shade trees that would overhang that 20-foot easement. But within that, we are bringing in a 10-foot concrete pathway that joins the intersection of Scottsdale Road to the existing pathway to the north on the Safari Loft development. Within this parklet, we're developing some seating, some nice landscaping, and as Brian pointed out, we are currently showing the incorporation of a couple of freestanding site walls. And the purpose for these is to provide a bit of buffer from the adjacent ground floor residences here from all the activity along the canal. But because they're freestanding, they don't in any way really impede any public access within the public right-of-way here. We do have an area just to the west end of this area that we do have a 6-foot wall, but that's within our own property to create a private fitness area, which the board has already reviewed as part of the original application. On the very west end of this section it's a fire lane, but we're regarding this from the standpoint of design as a public paseo. So this is a very important front yard connection that connects the canal improvements that we're doing all the way back up to Fashion Square Boulevard, to the Hazel development, and then over to Fashion Square itself. So we're treating this as a public park walkway. There's quite a bit of investment going into public art throughout this, this area. So it may be a little hard to see, and maybe that's purposeful because they're not meant to be large feature elements. But if you look right here, this is where those screen walls that I was referencing are located in front of the ground floor references. Here's a little bit larger blow up than the one Brian had on his screen that shows the section, right through this area here. So this is in the same area. So you see the 20-foot setback here that is the SRP maintenance requirement, their easement. We have this landscaped area. We have these integrated seat walls, as well as a pair of overlapping screen walls, again, to provide a little bit of buffer from the adjacent residences in this area. And this is a 3D rendering depicting what this should feel like from the public walkway. So again, it's heavily landscaped. It does provide a lot of seating areas and opportunities just to take advantage of that along the canal bank. So we also have an option here, because I know this was a question that the board had last time. What would this look like if we were to remove those short screen walls? And so this is just a depiction of that. The walls are no longer within this landscape area. We've kept the 3 cast-in-place seat walls, and nothing else is really revised, and they're removed from this elevation as well. And this is what a section through there would look like with those walls removed. So we're looking forward to the board's feedback, what your preference there would be. I will say that I think from our standpoint as designers, we would prefer to have them in there both aesthetically and for the benefit that they would provide to these ground floor units. But we're open to understanding what questions you may have about that and talking about that. This is going just to the end of this first section of view, looking to the south or southwest here, where that art paseo intersects with the canal. So again, this is a very important front yard, very important public connection for ZOM as a benefit to this project, and I think also a benefit to the general public. You'll be able to come along this regional pathway, walk right through those totally unimpeded, and go all the way up to Fashion Square. So it's a really wonderful pedestrian connection. So moving along a little bit further west, very long section here, so I have two different plan views of this. This is the area where the flood control district's existing drainage swale is. And right now, it has a fairly steep slope on the south side of this swale. Goes down to the bottom. It's currently gunnited on the sides, and there's open grates at the bottom that take quite a bit of flow off the adjacent property, and if I'm not mistaken, all the way from Scottsdale Road. So this is a functioning stormwater system that flood control does not want anything that we're doing to interfere with that function, either maintenance or ongoing stormwater function. So a little section through here, which is a little bit more descriptive. You can see the large stormwater buried pipe here. There's a series of these inlets all along this swale, but we have this very relatively steep side slope. This is an existing condition. This side slope is currently just bare concrete gunite. And what we're proposing to do is to remove the gunite, restabilize this slope with a techo mat system that is designed to be revegetated. We're then going to plant the trees, plant the ground cover and shrubs along this slope. The system is designed to hold that in place without erosion, and then to then cover it with a nice, good-sized rock cobble to just keep that all permanently in place. The other side is a little bit more of a gradual slope going up to the existing parking lot. And in both of these sides, we've proposed planting ornamental trees. These are cascalote trees. We spent quite a bit of time negotiating between SRP and the flood control district to be able to put any trees along this stretch at all. We were ultimately able to come up with a compromise with SRP and flood control district by doing a couple of extra things here, including limiting the size of these trees. But within this area, this irrigation system is currently being specified to sleeve all of the main lines. So we have Schedule 40 main lines, which is typically very tough, but we're actually going to put those main lines into an independent sleeve throughout this entire area in case something happens, a joint comes loose or there's a break, which will protect this entire area from potential blowout erosion. We've also incorporated automatic shutoffs in our irrigation control systems. They're break detectors, which will also stop any potential leak from getting out of control and damaging this area. And then finally, because of the very serious concern about compromising any of the stormwater function or potential ongoing maintenance that flood control district has, we've also agreed to incorporate rigid root barriers on either side of the flood control structures in order to make sure that these tree roots cannot get down and in any way interfere with that. So in doing so, we were able to get agreement from all the different entities involved that we would be able to landscape this area through here. So we think that was a real win-win for the overall process. This is a view of the first section along here. We're planting it with fibrous root shrubs that will hold that slope very much in place, and the small trees. This would be the next area to the west. It's very similar. This section does have some existing SRP transformers and a couple other utility concerns that we're being required to leave in place. But that had an impact on where the path can go and a couple other things in the design. But again, this is very similar view back towards the existing parking lot. And then pretty much the same section through this area. And an elevation of what that looks like. These are those existing SRP transformers, some of the existing flood control inlets that are exist in that swale. So the final section coming up to the intersection of Scottsdale and Camelback Road is the second area where we're able to improve and landscape the entire 40-foot canal right-of-way over to the existing building because it is a flush condition through this section. So obviously the concrete walk continues over. We're doing some enhanced paving in conformance with the Scottsdale Road Improvement Guidelines. So we're using the exact same paver that exists on the site and wraps up to the north, but we're also incorporating these decorative bands of lithocrete per those guidelines to just make this a bit more of a featured paving area at this important intersection. Within this zone here, we're developing these shaded seating areas. Because these trees are outside of the SRP 20-foot zone, we're allowed to use slightly larger trees through here to provide a little bit better shade. So these are the Sonoran Emerald Palo Verdes, xeriscape tree, but this will provide a larger tree massing along this building frontage, but will also supply quite a bit of shade to people that are sitting in these seat elements. Here's a section through here showing the trees, the seating elements, and the enhanced landscaping in this frontage. And a view as you come along from the north or the east here of what these areas will look like with the seating and some raised planting beds. And then one final rendering looking back the other direction as if you were in the middle of that Scottsdale Road Camelback intersection. Looking back towards the Azure project and the pathway. One other thing I would like to point out, again, working with SRP and flood control, we had quite a few restrictions, one of which was minimum turning radius for a truck, a maintenance truck coming off of Camelback Road had to make a very large radial turn here to get back onto this path. So we removed what we had originally put a tree in there with a raised planter, but that has to be a flush condition. So I just wanted to kind of explain why that ended up the way it did. We have to leave that flush. And the final slide that I'm going to go through is just what the plant palette through here is proposed to be. All these plants that are shown here were required to be on SRP's approved list. They have a fairly restrictive list of what they'll allow within their canal right-of-ways. So all of these are pre-approved through SRP, through our numerous discussions and approval process. So you guys saw this before. This is our tiny little Venn diagram. This is the little comfort zone that we've managed to find in this process. So I'm going to go back to the pretty picture and open it up for questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. And I need to make note that Mr. Craig has recused himself from this discussion. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Fakih.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman. You know, I would like to compliment what you did, Mr. Brown. I mean, the presentation, it's completely different than last time, and I appreciate you putting this together in a very short time here, but you did really an amazing job. So the couple of things I want to go back, and I spoke to the applicant early on. The one request I had, I think, related to area number 3 compared to area number 1. Like, I like what you did in area number 1 next to Camelback intersection. So what I would like to recommend, and I will leave it to other board member here, to have similar design concept in area number 3, where you move the walls and open it up to the public, especially how you're tying it in to the public art that you have just west of area number 3. So what I was saying is, maybe we remove the screen walls, the version you show where you have the screen wall out. And I like how you have those metal hedging, kind of like inviting, you know, this to be more a public area instead of just an enclosed area for the development. But I'm in support of this, especially the option that has no walls. But I would like to see it a little bit similar to the area number 1. And this is something probably you could work with staff on it, but just to make it consistent on what you did at the corner. I don't know if this is an option or if you see any challenge with that or not.
I would just comment, and I appreciate your input about the walls and about the design. Thank you. We do view the intersection as a different type of an area, both functionally and I think visually. Obviously, it's a very busy intersection. And we have different requirements of what we can do here and what we can do down there. And I think our preference in this area adjacent to the residential is to make this a lusher type of a landscape experience. I think visually coming down from the Safari project in the north, it's just a heavily landscape area. There's very minimal hardscape incorporated along the canal, except for the 10-foot walkway. And from a design standpoint, I guess it's my opinion that continuing that kind of a feeling from the north into the area adjacent to the Azure project is really the best way to treat that. I think both from the public and from the residences that are living in these units, from their standpoint as well. When we get over to Scottsdale Road, it is a busier intersection. And across the street, kitty corner on Scottsdale waterfront, it is more of this round kind of a plaza approach. They have that big door sculpture in the middle because they didn't have the same turning radius requirements that I guess we have. But I think this kind of mirrors that across the intersection with this nice round featured pavement type of thing. And we've incorporated, the seating, directly adjacent to it, which will be a very nice shady place, and that's oriented directly to the water, as opposed to putting seating that's oriented out to the traffic intersection. So overall, that would be my response to that suggestion. But again, we welcome your comments and
Yeah, and I'm curious to see what other board members
Sure.
feel about it. I mean, again, I like the option with no walls. I think making it less dense open, it will create more, I mean, I see it more from the public side. I think you're combining between the public and the residents, which I see what you're trying to get to. But from the public side, by having this area a little bit more open, it's going to make it a little bit bigger area, especially connected to public art. But I'm curious what other board members feel about this. But I really appreciate the effort you put here. Thank you very much.
You're
Thank
welcome. Thank you.
Mr. Brand?
Yeah, real quick, can you go to the plan that shows at this, is it Zone 1? Yeah, Area 1?
Plan view?
Yeah, go back to your plan view.
Could be one in here somewhere.
Yeah, right there. Oh, you were just on it. Yeah, so the area at the western side of where the cut through is, the section cut is, kind of where the letter A is, what is the function of that hardscape area that kind of diagonally cuts where one of your two boomerangs are there, and essentially where your section cut is?
These walkways through here?
Yeah, it's the walkways. What is the pavement section, the function of the pavement area on the top side of that plan there?
This area
Looks like a
up
bike
here-
rack.
Yeah, there, adjacent, or the building here has a proposed retail component to it. So these two sidewalks, you can see some bike parking indicated right here. So this is a place that people can come, circulate pedestrian or bicycle from the canal into this retail space.
So it's not secured.
No, it's not secure.
That's a public space.
That is correct.
So I was just going to say, just to respond to Board Member Fakih's question, is that, by the way, I'll first compliment not Mr. Floor.
Easy, Jeff.
On your exhibits, I think they do paint a much better picture and give us an idea of exactly what you guys are proposing. I think where we kind of missed it, man, I wish you would have shown this plan all the way up to the face of the building, because I think the very specific thing that Board Member Fakih is asking about is the availability of public space and how some of the enhancements along the canal are creating or improving spaces that are meant for the general public. And I think what you've done is actually really doing that, even though you're creating an edge, because there's a ground level public space that's on the back side of the treatment on the canal. Right. And so the back side of that boomerang bench, that 2-foot boomerang bench on the western edge of the canal there, is actually a public bench in which people are, you're using the canal edge to not only screen, but to screen another available public space. Now that space isn't necessarily located within the improvements in the canal, but it is a ground level public space, which I think is kind of hitting on, is a successful way of doing that. So I would prefer that I agree with the nature of the comments of Board Member Fakih, but I would personally prefer to have a different treatment and not repeat a similar language that we have on the public corner. I think that you will get a lot more foot traffic, and it's an office use. It's a different use, but I think that just the amount of foot traffic, I'd rather see as you progress down the canal, seeing different iterations of how you treat the canal frontage. I'm in support of what you guys have done, but I just wanted to add that commentary, so I appreciate the exhibits. But again, that is hoping that area just past the screening remains to be kind of a public area with maybe a cafe. It looks like your public bike racks are located on that area.
Right.
So,
and if I didn't say it before, I would like to reiterate that we're quite open to removing the walls. We're not hung up on having the walls there. So if that's the board's preference, I think we're...
Do you have ground level residences at that spot? Are there ground level?
There are around the corner. I think the final use of the retail, Nick is here to talk if we need to. It's all commercial space.
It's all commercial space, yeah.
Yeah, in this area, it definitely is, yeah.
On the eastern frontage on the canal, it's all, or on this face fronting the canal?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, this area right here is part of our amenity.
Is the amenity, okay.
Yeah, so this is actually an outdoor exercise yard. You can, I guess I could have taken this much further, but these are yoga mats, these blue things.
Yeah.
That's not a water feature, yeah.
Do you want to use that?
That one's in this deck, or it was in the first one I pulled up.
Yeah, it's in the too.
All right, let me see if I can pull up a little bit broader one. Thank you, Jason. There we go. get my finger to work. There we go.
So you're providing public yoga mats? Is that what I heard?
There you go. Back to there.
There we go.
Oh, that's much better. Yeah.
I'm not a very good fan.
Okay. I will just say, just this exhibit is a needed exhibit in this presentation because it shows because the canal frontage and the improvements that you're proposing aren't just about, they are technically about the approval of that canal portion, but it's really about the experience of the public along the canal. And what you've done on the private land with how you've developed the ground floor uses, both the amenities and a public retail area or cafe, is I think exactly what we're looking for along the frontage of the canal. So I think it completes this, I feel like it completes the story, and I'm supportive of the case, probably as it's presented. And I'm not sure that you need a 5-foot screen wall there. I'm probably moving a little bit away from that, just from because of the nature of the amenities and the engagement on the canal. I would probably move away from that, but I appreciate both sides.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have anybody else that would like to speak? Ms. Joyner?
Okay, I'm confused. What you're presenting today has a 3-foot wall, is that correct? Where we saw the people sitting along the wall in front of the residential area?
Let me go back to that.
They're preventing 2 options.
Yeah, I like that 3-foot wall. I can't imagine being a resident in that residential area, opening up my blinds and seeing some stranger standing there staring at me in the window. So I think that little visual break, I think, is a very good thing. But yeah, I like that one very much. So, and congratulations. This is a beautiful presentation. So thank you for your hard work, or whoever your artist was. So thank you. I'm in support of this application as it is.
Thank you.
Mr. Gushgari?
Thank you, Councilwoman. I just want to compliment you as well. Apparently, it's very evident there has been a lot of thought process into this whole project, how you mitigate wall and landscape. There has been a lot of thought process about how you mitigate irrigation, especially next to the steep slope. That was really admirable. So I just want to compliment your effort. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Scarborough?
Thank you, Councilman. I really like what you've done. That last exhibit, as Board Member Brand has clarified, has been tremendously helpful in seeing what the amenities were adjacent to this area. As it stands now, I'm not sure I understand the value of the 5-foot wall as it is between the public and commercial space, if I'm understanding that correctly. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So the 5-foot wall elements are not screening residents from the right-of-way area.
That is correct.
I want to make sure I understood that correctly. So if that's the case, I'm supportive of the project, but I would be also supportive of the 5-foot wall either being reduced to 3 or just deleted completely. Thank you.
Are we open to a motion?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to move to approve case 37-DR 2021, number 2, per the staff recommended stipulations, with the additional stipulation that if there is areas along the canal in which are adjacent to residential uses on the ground level, that you can retain the screen wall, but if it is adjacent to amenity or public uses, to subtract the screen wall from the design, after finding that the development application meets the development review board criteria.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Janik,
Yes.
Vice Chair Brand,
Yes.
Board Member Joyner,
Yes.
Board Member Faki,
Yes.
Board Member Gushgari,
Yes.
Commissioner Scarborough.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good luck. Let's move along to number 5, 50DR 2022 Optima McDowell Mountain Village staff presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Councilwoman Janik, Commissioner Scarborough, and members of the board. I'm Meredith Tessier with the Planning Department, and the case before you tonight is 50DR 2022 Optima McDowell Mountain Village. The subject site is located at the northwest corner of North Scottsdale Road and East Mayo Boulevard, as highlighted in yellow.
Excuse me, could you move a little closer to the microphone? Or
Certainly.
move it closer
Sorry.
to you? Thank you.
just using the keyboard to control the slides. Okay, is this better?
Much, thank you.
Okay, no problem. And then before you is the close-up aerial with surrounding uses that include one Scottsdale mixed-use development to the north, and we have vacant state land to the east, Bell Lexus car dealership to the south, and then the City of Phoenix Commercial Shopping Center to the west. So today, the site is zoned planned air park core development, air park mixed-use residential, planned community development, and planned shared development, which allows mixed-use developments. So today, the applicant's requesting Development Review Board approval for a new mixed-use development comprised of 1,330 dwelling units, as well as 36,000 square feet of commercial square feet area. Vehicular access is provided with 2 new driveways along East Mayo Boulevard, as well as access along North Scottsdale Road. Pedestrian circulation is enhanced with sidewalks and pathways along both street frontages, along the perimeter of the site, internal to the site, and future connections to the parcels to the east. Additional off-site improvements include this roundabout located at Mayo and 73rd, as well as a new transfit facility located at the southwest corner of the site. One moment, please. Okay, here we go. Landscape plan. So today we have this landscape plan which shows mature landscape species as well as low water type landscape species along the perimeter of the site as well as internal in the site to enhance pedestrian shade. One more time. Sorry, this is skipping quite a bit. Okay, building elevations. These are the proposed building elevations, which are consistent with the Optima McDowell Mountain Village Plan, which was approved by City Council late of last year. So the building elevations go up to 118 feet, which are also consistent with our Scottsdale sensitive design principles. Next are a series of renderings. Here we have a view along Scottsdale Road, another one along Mayo Boulevard, and lastly, a bird's eye view. I'll conclude my presentation with items of consideration, which include the proposals consistent with the Development Review Board criteria. It's also in conformance with the Optima McDowell Mountain Village. It's also consistent with the City of Scottsdale streetscape design guidelines. It is going to be constructed within 3 phases. And lastly, the city did receive correspondence, both opposition and support, which are attached to your report. So that concludes my presentation, and the applicant is here and has prepared a presentation as well.
Thank you. The applicant?
Give it a second. Good afternoon, DRB members, Councilwoman Janik, and Commissioner Scarborough. Thank you for your time reviewing our project, and thank you for your service to our community. Just a little bit about Optima. We were founded in 1978. We're a vertically integrated company. We have offices in Old Town Scottsdale and in Chicago, and we develop 1 or 2 projects at a time in Scottsdale and one in Arizona, rather, and 1 or 2 projects in Chicago. Our Arizona projects, we have the Optima Biltmore Towers, which was a condominium project, Optima Camel View Village, which was a condominium project, Sonoran Village, which was apartments, and Optima Kierland, which is our most recent project in Phoenix, which is condos and apartments. Upper left is the Optima Sonoran Village project. Upper right is the Optima Camel View project. Lower left is Optima Kierland, and lower right is Optima Biltmore Towers. A few photos of our most recent project, Optima Kierland. I believe this is relevant because our development plan is very similar to Optima Kierland, as each building has individual amenities on both grade level as well as the rooftops. Some photographs of the rooftops. These will be very similar to what we are going to be doing at Optima McDowell Mountain Village. One of the aspects that I'd like to point out here is the running track and the guardrail, which is approximately 3 feet lower than the deck, which really enables, I think, a very unique feel and a much more wide view from the roof. Some grade level amenities photos here. Meredith has already covered this, but just wanted to point out a couple things here. This area is specifically identified as a growth area in the City of Scottsdale's general plan from 2035. It's also identified in the Scottsdale Greater Air Park Character Area Plan as regional core greatest intensity use. We were approved at the Airport Advisory Commission on June 15th of 2022. We were approved by the Planning Commission on October 26th, 2022, and by City Council on November 21st of 2022. Staff is recommending to approve this project, and there are no key issues that they've identified. One interesting aspect of the project is that throughout the zoning process, we had over 300 letters and statements of support for the project and only 6 letters of opposition. The development plan and phasing overview. The project consists of 6 buildings, which is surrounded by a central shaded sheltered courtyard. The buildings are 118 feet to top of any part of the building. There's a total of 1,330 homes. We have 36,000 square feet of commercial and retail located on the Scottsdale roadside. We have 75% open space at grade level, 55% open space to the public. Our courtyard is approximately 630 feet by 260 feet at the widest point, 140 feet at the tightest point. We have 100% underground parking and loading. We have 3 access points, 1 on Scottsdale Road and 2 on Mayo Boulevard. And we have a roundabout on Mayo Boulevard that you see right here. We also are extending public transport with bus route 72, which is the most used bus route in the city of Scottsdale, and we are adding a bus stop. We also are preserving the city of Scottsdale's Scenic corridor, which is a 50-foot wide continuous scenic corridor easement on Scottsdale Road, and our connectivity to Scottsdale's bicycle master plan with a 14-foot perimeter bicycle and multi-use pedestrian path around the entire development. As you can see from this drawing, we have 3 phases. The first phase will consist of building 2 and building 3. Then we will be going to phase 2, which will consist of building 1 and building 6. And then we will be going to building 5 and building 4 in the 3rd phase. It's a condominium plat, which allows us to finance each building separately. As I mentioned, we have amenities at both grade level and at the roof, which enables us to, instead of finance the project in phases, we can actually finance the project in building per building, which gives us a lot more flexibility to build the project faster and more efficiently. 25% of the enclosed space at grade level is retail commercial. That was a request of the mayor. Traffic will be on average 1% to 1.8% more daily traffic than if the project was not present. That's taking into account all known projects in the area, as well as a general background growth rate of 2.5% annually to account for regional growth. I think some interesting information here on open space, shading, and commercial and amenity information. We have a total, it's a 22-acre site. We have a total of 14 acres of open space. That's 75% of the site. As I mentioned, 55% of that is open to the public. As far as our shading goes, I know this has been a very important part of the project and a basis of the project because we've, as I mentioned, we've designed the building with the 6 buildings around a central courtyard. We have approximately 20% of the site is actually physically shaded. That's not including trees or landscaping. That's overhangs is what we're talking about there. And as I mentioned, grade level commercial and amenity information, the commercial is 25% of the grade level enclosed area. As you can see from the drawing here, the pink area right here is the commercial space. And each building has their own management and property management, leasing, or sales office. And the yellow that you see here is the residential amenities. Also, something that we're very excited about is the connectivity of the Scottsdale Master Bicycle Plan. This is something that many residents don't know much about, but you can see here is that it's an amazing plan that the city of Scottsdale has produced where you can basically bicycle anywhere you want from North Scottsdale all the way down to South Scottsdale. And so we're happy to start a maybe bigger version of this with this 14-foot bicycle trail that we have around the project, and we hope that our neighbors in the future continue with this bicycle path. We think it's, especially if the future hospitals are approved, direct access via bicycle to those hospitals, I think will be pretty spectacular. As I mentioned, the interior courtyard is 630 feet by 260 feet. I think this really is going to be something that people will have a real wow factor over. It's a combination of artificial turf, drip irrigation, and xeriscape landscaping. And they're 8-foot wide interior circulation paths that are connecting buildings and access to below-grade parking, the perimeter path, and sidewalks. The bicycle path that I mentioned is a total of 3,150 feet. And as you can see right here on Scottsdale Road, we have a destination bicycle plaza that will be connected to our commercial space. Here's a rendering of that space on Scottsdale Road. You can see the commercial space right here, the bicycle path. And you can start to see some of the architecture of the building with the undulations, in and out undulations of the project. Okay. More of the grade level vehicular circulation. On Scottsdale Road entrance that you see right here, this is a right-in only. It includes residential, guest, and commercial. The first Mayo West entrance that you see here is a right in and right out. It includes residential, guest, commercial, and loading and servicing. And the Mayo Boulevard East entrance, which is a right in and right out and allows access from all directions. This is a diagram of our lower level 1 parking scheme here. The blue that you see here is for the commercial space. So I think what's slightly different about this project than our past projects in Scottsdale, including Camel View Village as well as Sonoran Village, is that everything is all of the commercial is 100% concentrated on grade level and on Scottsdale Road. So the blue is the commercial parking, the green is the guest visitor parking, and the pink is the private enclosed residential parking. Here's a diagram of lower level 2. One thing that is another evolution of our Optima McDowell Mountain Village is the fact that we have completely underground 2-level accessibility for all of our garbage, recycling, and loading vehicles. So as they come down the ramp, which is the west ramp on Mayo Boulevard, we have the central spine, and residents will be able to back their moving trucks directly up to each building, and it is 100% underground. That's including the trash and recycling trucks as well. Now into the architecture, materials, open space, and landscaping. Each project that we do is unique and different, and this is certainly the next evolution of Optima architecture. What you'll see in our renderings here is you'll see lots of undulating facades with protruding and recessed volumes, which we believe creates a rich architectural vocabulary, echoing the mountains of the McDowell Mountains. We also will have the next evolution of our vertical landscaping system with plants and vines that both shade the interior of the building as from the harsh desert climate, as well as create privacy. The building is a post-tension concrete structure with efficient glazing, energy-efficient mechanical systems, and the largest private residential rainwater harvesting system in the United States, as we're very proud of. The glass used on the project will be limited to a light reflectance of less than 20% per the City of Scottsdale guidelines. This rendering in particular, you get to see the commercial area down here, as well as this opening into the central courtyard and the bicycle plaza. This is a view of the bicycle plaza and courtyard from Scottsdale Road. Each residence has their own private terrace as well. This is a view of the northwest corner of the bike path. This is a view of the central courtyard. I think one thing that's going to be very unique about this is that we've taken this artificial turf and we're going to have a very, very usable central courtyard. Whereas some of our past projects, we've had a combination of decomposed granite and xeriscape and drip irrigation. And although the paths are there, there's actually not as much usable space. So we really feel that this place is going to be very, very highly used by both residents and the public. Our mechanical and utility equipment are located on various levels of the project. They've been carefully thought and integrated into our architecture. The utility services do not conflict with any street frontage, open space, pedestrian amenities, residential amenities, landscape features, or on-site circulation. Also, this is the next evolution of our rooftop design. You see that on these buildings here, there is a lot more usable space on the roof here, and I think that's due to a mechanical system that allows us to enclose our condenser compressor units on the roof here, as well as the irregular aspect of the building with the ins and outs and undulating facade. It's a rendering of the rooftop, and you can see the running track over here that's below the level of the deck. We're very proud of our sustainability program that we have for this project. This will be our most sustainable building to date. We will be part of the International Green Construction Code. As I mentioned, the open space. We will be the, I believe, first project to be under the IECC, the new IECC code that the City of Scottsdale has now adopted. Talk a little bit about water in a minute. One thing that was a unique aspect about this project is back in August when the federal government was threatening to go from a 2A to a Tier 2B, we had to come up with a solution in order to get the support of the mayor and city council. And we identified an idea that would be to try to make this project as water neutral as possible. And we were able to accomplish that by transferring 2,750 acre-feet of water to the City of Scottsdale, which was pursuant to our development agreement. Based on a conservative calculation, using the Design Standards and Policies Manual of the cities, that's about 11 years of water that we've given the city. If you take a more aggressive approach, which is the exact data that we have from our Optima Kierland and our Optima Sonoran Village project, which is using the same exact vertical landscaping system, we calculate that to be about 32 years of demand that we have delivered the city. One interesting thing about our projects, I think that we are carefully monitoring the water in all of our projects as we continue to be owners of our apartment buildings. Our projects consume about half as much water than an average multifamily unit in Scottsdale. This was very interesting and was a fun process to go through during the zoning process to actually dig in and really understand our numbers. That's actually about 1/4 as much as the average single-family home in Scottsdale. And just to finish up here, we have had public outreach for this project was more than we've ever done in any project in the past. We had these 4 big open houses that we had at the site. We created a project website which enabled people to reach out to us and answered as many questions as we could. And as I mentioned, we had a tremendous amount of support for this project and very, very little opposition. Also, the public benefits, as I mentioned throughout this presentation, most of these. One thing that I think is also very important to note is the fact that we are going to be paying the city a $15.6 million FAR and height buy-up that can be used at the mayor and the city council's discretion. Thank you very much. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I think I'll start at one end and go to the other. We'll start with you, Mr. Craig.
Thank you. Great presentation, thank you. And I'd like to also say that I had a chance to speak with Mr. Hovey and about the project. And first of all, I'd like to compliment you on your presentation. There are several things I really like about the project, the site plan, and just the location, proximity to the highway. It's a great buffer. Your sustainability element is great, especially, and as a landscape architect, specific to the water harvesting and the water reuse, the traffic and the underground parking. And again, the proximity to Highway 101 and the circulation and connectivity to the bike paths. Quick question, on the interior, the large interior open space, do you have opportunity for smaller walking paths through what appear to be gardens? I know you might have, you've got some perimeter, but you also don't have, or do you have any bigger interior walking paths?
Yeah, you can see on this rendering here, we do have paths throughout the central courtyard.
Right.
So you can go from building to building.
So you can?
Yes.
Okay, now I saw a perspective view, maybe an earlier one. Anyway, where you have some landscape islands and the turf, and you and I spoke about the artificial turf that you're going to be installing right there. So in the landscape area is, you know, I guess you're on artificial turf, so perhaps walking paths aren't quite as important, but there will be the ability to transition from one building to the other.
Yes.
And you showed an image of the bike lane that's paralleling to Scottsdale Road and the outdoor seating and dining area, and I'm wondering if there perhaps could maybe be a little bit of separation or a way to slow that bike travel down, because it appeared that the bike lane was like immediately adjacent to what would be the outdoor dining and a small fence, and we might want to look at some type of either a separation element or striping or slow down in this area.
Happy to accommodate that with slow signs.
Yeah, thanks.
One thing I think I must have skipped over here, but I think it's interesting because there were several questions by DRB members regarding the water, and I think this one skipped over, but the way the system works is that it's comprised of a tank with 2 chambers. There's a rainwater harvesting chamber that has approximately 84,000 gallons of water. And there's a stormwater retention chamber, which has approximately 444,000 gallons of water. Water is collected from all roof surfaces of each building, as well as grade level garage roof. So the entire open space area that you see has a roof underneath it, waterproofed roof. And that water is then harvested, which will be utilized for irrigation. So that's how that system works.
Thank you. I'm going to skip to Mr. Scarborough next because he has to leave early. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. First off, I did meet with the applicant to discuss this project, and overall, I think this is a fantastic project for Scottsdale. Thank you for everything you've done here. I think you've really thought through a lot of items, and I really appreciate all the hard work you and your team put into this. The architecture, I like the building layouts, I like the undulation, I like the low reflectivity of the glass, I like the amenities on the roof. I really appreciate you taking some time to think about the use on the roof and having those sight lines for those using the very tip top of it and really maximizing the viewability. I really appreciate the fact that you have all of the sort of back of house items, trash, recycle, loading, unloading, all underground and out of the way of the public or the customers using the facility. I think you've really created a project here where you sort of have a back and front of house for residents so you can maximize the usage of that main floor, so that plaza area. I think you've done a great job integrating pedestrian uses, commercial, and bicycle pathing. Overall, if we're going to have condos and apartments in Scottsdale, I think this is a great example of how to do it. So I want to just say thank you, and I'm very supportive of it. And while I don't feel like I'll be here in time for the vote, if I were, I would vote for it. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Scarborough.
Thank you. Ms. Joyner?
I'm not a councilman yet. I'm not going to reiterate how many wonderful things there are in this project. I think it's absolutely stunning and beautiful, and I think North Scottsdale is going to be very happy to have this project there. I do have a question about traffic, and I know I have spoken with 2 of your staff members about it, but I'm not hearing or seeing in the packet the traffic flow on East Mayo. In other words, if I'm exiting the project, I wanted to know because I go to Lexus all the time, so I'm real familiar with, you come out of Lexus, the only place you can go is to Scottsdale Road. I think I've been told that you're going to have access further east, I think over to Hayden. I haven't seen that, so could you explain the traffic to me from the project if I want to come out of the project and go east?
Sure.
Where do I go?
Well, the road isn't there yet, as you mentioned.
Well, that's my question.
Yes, and so that road is going to be, I'm not sure when the city of Scottsdale is going to be putting that road in. Does anybody know that answer? I do not know what that answer
Okay,
is.
so part of the project is not the extension of Mayo, is that correct?
No, it's the extension of Mayo to this turnabout.
Okay.
So we are providing the turnabout here.
Okay.
And do not know, there's several projects that are going to be coming that are directly to the east of our project, including a potential Banner Hospital and Honor Hospital, even further,
Because
further to the
that's
east.
putting a lot of traffic onto Scottsdale Road and not wanting to ever create a situation like Frankwood right in Pima. I just kind of wanted to know what the plan was from the city for eastbound. So is there a plan, or where does that plan stand for traffic?
Council Member Janik, DRB member. My name is Kiran Guntupalli. I'm with the City Transportation Department. Currently, the parcel to the east is owned by State Land Department, and it recently got auctioned off, and they are in the development process. And as part of their off-site improvement requirements, they are required to construct Mayo Boulevard to connect to the east to Hayden Road, sorry.
Okay, but that is not part of this project, is that correct?
That's offset improvements for the parcel adjacent to it, so no, they're not part of this
Okay.
application.
Okay, thank you. Beautiful project, I highly support it, but I do want to see that road to the east going to Hayden soon, so thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Brand?
I'm in full support of the project as well. I just had a meeting with the presenter as well. The questions that I had were mostly regarding with a project like this, with the amount of glazing that you have with the construction and glazing and the reflectivity that could potentially be off the glazing. I know when we're looking at projects like this that are specifically when you're under the IECC 2021, which is a pretty restrictive energy code, we're always looking for solutions for daylighting that are also heat restrictive and energy that comply with the energy code, and also let daylight into the building. And usually this comes with higher reflectivity values of glazing. But I commend your staff and your guys' team for putting this together with the tint on the windows, which I think it will help with your heat gain and gets you guys to where you need to go. It creates originality with the project, and I think the concerns of the reflectivity are mitigated, and I don't think it'll be a concern. So I appreciated the presentation, and specifically because you've changed the layout of the building from the Kierland layout with more fingers of the building coming out of the building, so you're creating a lot more shade in the facades. So I appreciate that shift in the layout of the building. So I think it'll create a really dynamic facade and dynamic project along the freeway frontage. So I think everything that I had to say has been reiterated already. So the only other thing that I have to add is just is really opinion based on the water harvesting vault. I know there's been a lot of conversation with the city about whether or not it should be treated and reused on site versus being stored and pumped back into the city's effluent system and treated and being brought back to full drinkable water based on the facilities that we have in place, which is really something for the city staff to look into. But I appreciate all of the efforts that you guys have made to bring a great project forward for Scottsdale. I think it's something we can really be proud of. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Kuchgari?
Thank you, Councilwoman Janik. I have technical questions that relate to engineering and more informational than anything else. Let's talk about construction traffic for phase 1, 2, and 3. Is it going to come from the east, Hayden, or is it going to come from Scottsdale, the construction traffic? And speaking of transportation, would there be any improvement, be in streets, infrastructures, would be phased, or will they all be phased with phase 1, the ultimate build-out for the actual roadways?
That's a good question. For phase 1, the construction traffic will be coming from Scottsdale Road because Mayo Boulevard hasn't been extended yet. As far as the infrastructure goes, it's all in phase 1. Everything's in phase 1.
So do I understand you correctly, the actual roadways, I'm talking about Mayo Boulevard, Scottsdale Road, whatever else that may be associated with the project, will be built at the ultimate configuration on phase 1. And so will the infrastructure. Okay, that's wonderful. And what happened to phase 2 and 3 construction traffic? At that point in time, would it be still access of Scottsdale? I know you cannot look at the crystal ball and see what tomorrow brings. Construction traffic is going to be horrendous, in my opinion, for phase 1, 2, and 3 to access off of Scottsdale Road. It'll be really, really difficult. I'm sure you can relate to that. So that would be a major concern. As we know, Scottsdale and 101 is one of the most congested traffic at 101 intersection, second to Tatum, or maybe worse than Tatum. And adding construction traffic is going to be really terrible. Not terrible, it'll be difficult. So, and that's why I'm asking that question. Please.
Yes, Thaddeus Lennox from Optima. The current plan we have submitted to the city on construction access throughout the entire project, including phase 1, calls for construction traffic to come in off of Mayo Boulevard at the southeast corner of the property. And that is the plan for the entire construction, is everything will come in on that southwest corner as we build out the project.
Okay, thank you. What about in lieu payments? There was a reference in the package Let me redirect the question differently. Will all the improvement be done with this development, or will the portion be delayed and deferred with an in lieu payment to the city?
No, everything, we are handling all of the offsites and all of the improvements, so there's no in lieu payment required by the city.
And that includes stormwater retention and storage, correct?
Yes. The stormwater water retention, we are required to make an additional payment of $160,000 to the city for the waiver for the stormwater retention. But yes, that's us that we...
Waiver for what?
It's a requirement of the city, from what I understand. TJ can better answer that. Thank you.
Yeah, there's a calculation that's done based on whether you're retaining 100% on site or a portion on site. We're retaining a portion of the stormwater on site, and then we pay a waiver for the balance.
That's exactly why I'm asking the question. So what is the percentage of retention that you're actually providing on site?
I believe it's 50%, but I'm not 100% on that number. There's a tank that we're constructing in the southeast corner of the site that will perform the stormwater retention for the project, and that discharges directly into the stormwater canal that runs on the east side of the property and then goes under Mayo Boulevard over towards Lexus and down Scottsdale Road.
Well, just for the record, I'm sure Stormwater Management Group has approved your proposal. I'm sure that's the case.
Correct.
Which is the only reason I'm asking that question. I am not in favor, I personally, as an engineer, I'm not in favor of this concept. When we have a drainage structures for that size of a project, in lieu contribution would not benefit the area specifically from the retention perspective. It just doesn't. Yes, the city can take that fund, apply it somewhere else, or enhance something different, but it doesn't serve the property per se the way it should be provided. That's a personal opinion, has nothing to do with you. If the Stormwater Management Group approves it, well, it's approved. It's not something that I personally would support. Thank you for the answers, by the way. Has this project gone through the airport traffic, the airport authority for review?
Yes, it has.
And they approved it?
Yes, it has.
That's great news also. The last question is, 55% of the open space is dedicated to the public.
Correct.
That's a wonderful thing. As a Joe Public want to go there and just hang out, how do I access that area? Where do I park? I'm sure there was a specified number of spaces for the public to park and enjoy the space.
Yeah, so this is a diagram of our lower level 1 parking. So you would enter the building from the West Mayo ramp that you see here, or the Scottsdale Road ramp that you see over on this side. And you would come down the ramp, and as I mentioned, the blue is all for commercial parking, and the green is for visitor parking.
Okay.
So you would park directly here. You would come to a lower level courtyard open to the grade level, or this one over here, and you would either walk up the stairs or go up an elevator.
There was a reference in the packet that we received. There's a portion of this development goes under private wastewater system. I'm not so sure I understand what that is. Why is there a portion of this development to be private wastewater?
There is no private wastewater.
That's really good. By the way, and again, those questions more informational than anything else. I think I echo the other comment from the board. It's a beautiful project. I think the location of it is really wonderful. I think the aesthetic of it is fantastic. It couldn't be in a better place. So I'm supporting the project. Again, I just wanted to know the technical issues of engineering, because this spot is so vivid and so congested, if you will. And issues that relating to traffic and drainage become really critical to the public at large. But thank you.
Thank you.
Board Member Gishkari, can I add a little bit of color to that? As someone who's worked at Kierland Commons for 24 years, I've driven in and out right past an Optima construction site for not sure how many years that Kierland was under construction, but I will say that their traffic management and the impact on that area, which is a highly walkable, and I'll say that that intersection at Greenway Hayden in Scottsdale at Kierland Commons is a pretty congested area as well, but I think it was handled really well. I think your mitigation plan was exceptional from that position, and you're still under construction right now on the last phase on the Les Maisons site. So I have good faith that you guys do what's best for the area. I appreciate what you've done. Just
Thank you.
Mr. Faki.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Well, I think, Mr. Hovey, you've done it again. I mean, this is one of the great projects. I mean, I go into every project you guys have developed, and I'm really proud. I'm really proud to see it because your project is not just a business that benefits you guys. I think a lot of these buildings end up being truly an addition to the whole surrounding, and we've seen it in every project you guys done. You do amazing work. I love what you've done on the architecture. I look forward to hopefully some of the best eatery in Chicago to show up to your restaurant here. So I think the commercial will be awesome. And you know, like going back to what I was following this case through the whole zoning processes, what you guys did out of the box, I think you raised the bar on a lot of aspects, from stormwater management to the water conservation, a lot of ideas that it was unique. I haven't seen it in other projects that you guys implemented. So, and we see it here now, but I know how much, you know, you went through just through the rezoning to get here. I just compliment you, the whole team. I look forward to see this project happen, and really awesome job. Good job. I'm going to support for sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just a few comments. You did a wonderful presentation. I agree with all the comments my fellow people up here have made, and I do believe you have set the stage for Scottsdale for all new development. So thank you very much, and it's a very high standard. With that, do I have a motion?
Thank you, Councilman Janet. Can I just make a couple more public thank yous here to
Sorry.
the staff? Just want to say specific thank yous to Meredith. She has done a just fabulous job throughout this process. I think we started back in February. And Meredith, Chris, Brad, and Tim with the planning department were excellent. And Greg, just right from the start. Brian Biesmeyer and Gretchen and Anita Pritchard with water, as well as Scott Mars. Eric Anderson, city attorney. Phil Kircher with traffic. Elania Hayes with development and engineering. Doug Wilson with fire, Richard Anderson with stormwater management, and Jim Thompson, city manager. We had a great experience with the city of Scottsdale. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion. I'll move to approve case 50DR 2022 per the staff recommended stipulations after finding that the development application meets the Development Review Board criteria.
Second?
I'll second it.
Councilwoman Janik,
Yes.
Vice Chair Brand,
Yes.
Board Member Joyner,
Yes.
Board Member Craig,
Yes.
Board Member Faki,
Yes.
Board Member Gishgari.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. Thank you.
Congratulations. Good luck with everything. Moving on to the non-action item, number 6, white paint color discussion. Brad, is that you?
It is. Thank you, Councilwoman
thank
Janik.
you.
I know everybody's been highly anticipating this discussion, so
I'm not sure why everyone's leaving. We don't
Yeah.
want to all talk about the color white.
well, before we get kicked off, I wanted to acknowledge that both my colleague Mark and I dressed appropriately for this discussion. We got our white shirts. I know I see a couple of the board members here as well, but certainly, you know, we want to have this discussion. I think it's important. We've seen a lot of applications come in front of the DRB regarding paint colors and white in particular. Beyond all those ones that you have seen recently, obviously staff has been doing a lot of behind-the-scenes work with a lot of applicants on white paint colors. So it's a trend in the industry and in the marketplace that we want to acknowledge, and I think the board members want to have some discussion today. So getting into that, I just want to note a couple of considerations, as I did in the memo to the board on this topic, that the staff reviews anytime we're looking at a paint change, in particular that might include white. Those topics are on the screen there, and they include light reflective value, or LRV, the color tint, the color tone, and how that proposed color is being applied to the building. Is it a wholesale application of the color, or is it in strategic areas? So with regards to light reflective value, for those that don't know, LRV is a measurement system that's commonly used by design professionals, and it indicates the lightness or brightness of a color. It's measured on a scale of 0 to 100. LRV of 100 would be a pure white color, straight white color. Staff generally directs applicants when they're showing a lighter color to show an LRV of 70 or less. That's kind of been our threshold. And that threshold has generally been established as a way to help us have lighter colors jive, so to speak, with the design guidelines of the city, which promote muted earth tones. And I know that's a pretty general statement, muted earth tones. And that doesn't maybe necessarily apply directly to white colors or light colors, but as we've tried to do that, as staff, we've been trying to do that through an LRV of 70 or less on lighter colors. The next one up, color tint, that is basically adding white to any kind of color hue to lighten the color. Effective tinting is generally referred to as making it a pastel color, and it will soften or mute a color. So because of that, we don't really have much to say when someone's tinting a color. We generally like the idea, again, of a muted color and softened color. Color tone, on the other hand, is something we look at because that's generally adding gray to a color. That's another trend we're seeing in the marketplace, is mixing grays into color palettes. But when we see grays, we've been seeing those traditionally or more frequently without a base or a tone or a warmness or any kind of brown or beige tone to it. We've seen that recently with colors that are just a straight gray color without any color tone to it, which we generally do not are in favor. We're not generally in favor of. Again, because we like to see something that's going to be looking to match or complement our muted earth tones guidelines. So we are generally directing applicants to use warm grays and undertones when they use grays on a building for paints. And then finally, application. When we have a building that has varying wall planes and then paint colors applied differently on those different wall planes, it actually helps staff be a little more comfortable that we're not looking at a building that's going to be a broad or a wholesale application of one color, in this particular case white, which becomes very difficult again to use with our muted earth tones guidelines. So when we see those broad applications, those are generally the ones we send to the Development Review Board for review, and those are typical of the ones you've seen recently. So that concludes my real. Well, I'm going to show a couple different applications of warm whites and cool whites here. You can't really see much difference on the screen. I understand that, but obviously whites can vary quite a bit with different LRVs and different tones. Staff is generally directing applicants to use warm whites with LRV around 70 or less. Not many of those are on this screen right now, and those, unfortunately, these are the ones I pulled off of Sherman-Williams' website, are the most popular colors, as you can see in the marketplace right now, and they don't usually fall within the guidelines that staff is looking to apply. So that's, again, part of the reason why you're seeing a lot of those come to the board. So that's going to conclude my presentation. A real quick opening for that, and we'll turn it over to the board for discussion. Thank you.
All right. Jeff, you
I
can
wanted to
start.
step forward and admit that I was the person who emailed Brad to bring this on the agenda, because I didn't want to make sure we didn't have any hearings that we didn't talk about white. And so we hadn't talked about it on this one.
But I have a question before we start talking about white. To staff, when you apply for a business license and then you have to reapply for a business license, is there a warning on the application that says, do not paint your building without a permit? Because we've seen, 30 cases in 3 years or whatever, it's ridiculous. So, and I realize that people like to say, act first and seek forgiveness later, but that's very expensive. So is there a warning anywhere that lets a business owner know that they cannot paint their building without a permit?
Councilwoman Janik, Board Member Joyner, I'm not aware of that warning, but I think that's a worthwhile suggestion. Mm-hmm. Perhaps there's something we can integrate on that building.
Line.
Yeah, on the building applications that mentions if you're planning to make any alterations to your building, please seek the planning department for review of that.
Okay, thank you.
I thought it was worthwhile for us to just have an open session without any sort of case that we had as a specific application. If we had any advice for staff, I mean, we've talked about it internally. I think Michael and I had a conversation about it, and we thought it would be just to have a broad-based board discussion. And frankly, we hardly ever get the chance to all sit here and talk together casually about a subject, but it's something that's just come up and we all joke about it. But is there a better way to give staff leverage, to have better guidance, so that there's just, it feels like it's really objective, or subjective, I'm sorry, when cases come up here, and it's just, there's not enough. I think Brad presented some great guidelines, but I didn't know, just individually, all of us as a board, we're all here if we had any opinions on it.
Mr. Fakih?
I know from my side, I will start asking, does this meet what's current trend, I guess? So if it's trendy, I'm in for it. So I mean, we'll look into it when you mentioned that these are the most popular. It seems like this is what a lot of building would like to paint, to this popular color, right? Any reason why staff doesn't go with a popular color, I guess?
I'll just say, well, just giving you back, so I'm sorry to interrupt, just from an industry professional who's looking at a lot of commercial applications in paint, there's a heavy, probably what our design guidelines don't, we focus a lot on earth tones and desert tones, but there's a huge presence of mid-century modern that's out here in Scottsdale, and I think what people forget is that the basis of color of mid-century modern is white. It's all white. If you go to Palm Springs, there's a lot of white color and white paint that's involved in mid-century. So I think it's a part of the Scottsdale heritage that's overlooked because there's a lot of desert proximity that we have that I think it's not appropriate out there, but in some of the historic areas of downtown, it's actually a fairly appropriate color. And the LRV of 70, really, when you're looking at a design palette and you're looking at a building paint palette, a 70 LRV, it's hard to get something that feels like a white tone. It is. It feels like a white that's been through a dust storm. I mean, it is subtle, but I think if you're looking for contrast on a building, it is a little bit difficult. I'll just say from my perspective, that's why maybe if we have the advice to raise it up to that, if they're in certain areas, maybe we have the ability to go up to 80. Over 80 seems like something that you get into the pure whites, but if you're in more urban areas or have some historical context of mid-century or something like that, that maybe there's a discussion that happens that has a little more flexibility.
Can I say something real fast? And to your point, Jeff, or Board Member Vice Chair Brand, I look at these samples up here, and they all appear to be against a pure white.
Mm-hmm.
And I see cream, I see
Coffee.
creamy, creme, whatever, that have an 82 and then an 81 LRV that, to me, I think would be appropriate and not have a big reflective value and might work real nice with an additional color palette on that facility. And for staff, I guess, Brad, maybe we can talk about, a little bit more discretion when it comes to how you perhaps dictate or approach the applicant, with color options that, an 82 might work in a situation like this.
Just what I think might be a good idea, too, is to look at the submissions, look at the reflective value they're requesting. Looks like you have a lot of them in the 70s for sure, and then you've got some in the 80s, and see how prevalent 70 to 80 is, 80 to 90, and if it seems reasonable, because there are so many requests, to just adjust the level of the LRV, and perhaps to designate maybe certain areas of the city or certain types of construction that would allow that higher LRV. And by the way, as a science teacher, we did tints and shades, and that's exactly what you're talking about. It was a very neat experiment, so thanks.
I think what's important, and I didn't know about your application guideline that you had there. I mean, tints and shades is what we're looking at when we look at all these different color palettes. But I think what's important, and I haven't heard staff make the, maybe it hasn't been verbalized about, but it's been subconscious about how you assess the application, but I haven't heard you verbalize it to the board about, or maybe there haven't been cases where you've got changing of angles, but I think the highlight versus field, uninterrupted, how shade and shadow is impacting the white, and then if there are differing angles, I think that sort of criteria is probably exactly what we're looking for as far as staff's assessment, to have a baseline of why this case is coming forward, so that you guys have a better ability to approve something that is slightly above the case because it's meeting some specific application criteria. I think that's probably, I wasn't aware of that you guys had that tool or that you'd officially outlined it, or maybe you haven't, you did for this meeting. Can you expound on that?
Councilwoman Janik and Vice Chair Brand, yeah, I just brought that up for this meeting. But I think it's an important topic to be we don't have an official guideline for it, but I think it's something, as you mentioned, subconsciously that we are looking at when we look at whites. I think, or lighter colors in general. I think the applications you all have seen recently, unfortunately, have been more broad applications. They're painting the entire building that one color, and that's again challenging for staff. We're looking for the DRB to make a decision more often than not on those type of applications, and I think we see those because it's an easier and perhaps less expensive way for a property owner to create that pop and redo their building by just painting the building all one color with one trim color. And I would hope that we would see in the future more applications where there's a little bit more strategic use of those colors, those lighter colors in contrast and in complementary other colors on the building. But we do see more often than not just someone saying, I want two colors. I want this lighter color and a trim color. And then they just paint the entire base of the building one color. And to Ms. Joyner's point, yeah, they do it before we even give them an approval. So it's just a real challenge. The marketplace is transitioning, and this kind of input is great because we can hopefully get ahead of some of that and get a little bit more discussion with applicants on where they can go with their colors.
Yes.
There's a house that I drive by regularly in the Cactus Corridor that is so offensively white. It's a single-family residence. I don't want to see that. It's like that I don't even know how their HOA allowed it. It's hideous that it's so, it almost hurts your eyes, it's so white. But some of these colors that are slightly over 70 or whatever, and when an applicant comes to you and let's say they're going to paint, they haven't already erred on the side of painting, what is the conversation and what is the feedback or what is the pushback?
Councilwoman Janik, Board Member Joyner, I mean, a lot of times we have that back and forth conversation, and obviously that conversation is a lot easier when they haven't painted yet.
Right.
They're more open to that conversation, more open to explore other colors. Obviously, that challenge is there when they've gone ahead and paid the money and done the application. But, you know, even with this threshold, if you are deciding you want to go a little bit higher, and we're more open to that, following the trends of the community, you're still going to get people who want to push it to 85, 90, 93. They want to keep pushing it. So I don't know that you'll see significantly less applications because we had this discussion, and we'll continue to work as staff to make that a little bit broader, hopefully to help applicants. But I still think we're going to see a lot of applications come in front of you because we're just going to see people, well, now the threshold's 80, I want to do 85. And so I think, or 90. And so we'll just continue to work with them, but the conversation is always easier when they haven't made that decision yet, when we're more open to go back and forth with them.
When that happens and when there's that pushback, do they have to pay a fee to come before us? Is there a cost related to that?
There is, yes.
Good, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Councilman Janik. Mr. Carr, you articulated your position very well, and I think that you're right on the head, right in the nail. The other issue is really Is 80% appropriate versus 74? It depends on the mass, as you said, and it also depends on the background. If you have a strip of white about 75 to 76 against a chocolate gray, it really stands out. So to the Vice Chair's point, I think staff should have the flexibility to make a decision, and I guarantee you there will be some applications and some applicants will force the issue to come to the board anyway. And if that's the case, staff had to make a decision, present it to the board with an explanation why it's before us. We need to know why specifically. And the downside to that as well is the color that we see in the packet. Sometimes the pictures, if you will, does not present the true color. We have many cases, we looked at it and we said, oh, that is not attractive, but we see the sample on the screen and we say, we all change our minds. So I think the flexibility, to your point, Vice Chair, you should have the flexibility to make a decision and bring it to us upon your discretion and explain to us, and we'll make the decision.
You don't have a Sherwin-Williams color deck in your office like I do?
I'm sorry?
You don't have a Sherwin-Williams color deck in your office like I do? No, I was going to suggest that too. Does the staff still require a full drawdown for submitted paint colors?
I think, yes, we do when there's situations where we're a little iffy, so to speak, on that. We'll definitely ask for that drawdown. And, we'll actually walk outside, take a look at it in the sunlight, different shade and different areas and different angles.
Does everybody even know what does this board know what a drawdown is? Okay, I went through having to go get those all the time as a young intern. It's not easy, actually. Okay, great. I didn't know if they were still doing that or not, because I know some of your materials board selections have turned digital, and there's less actual materials that are required to be submitted.
Yes, absolutely. We've pretty much gone all digital, but again, when we have a question about a color it's borderline, we'll ask for that color drawdown.
Great.
3 years ago, we always had the applicants would bring samples to us to see. We haven't seen a sample in a year.
Britt, are there any specific recommendations you want from DRB, or in general, do you just want the flexibility to adjust above the recommendation level of LRV?
Certainly, Councilwoman. I think what we've heard today is providing some great direction for us. I think it gives staff a little bit more flexibility to address what the marketplace is seeking. And so hopefully we'll have that additional ability to speak with applicants and make a little bit more, have a little broader discussion about what those colors are. And then hopefully, again, as I mentioned, applicants are more open to using additional colors besides two presented on their application. But yes, I think the discussion has been great today, and it would be helpful.
Good, thank you. Well, no other comments? Okay, motion to adjourn. Do I hear that motion? I think I did. Second?
Second.
Thank you.